A lot of people believe that Lightyear was Pixar's way of retconning away Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, the animated show from the early 2000s. But according to the director of Lightyear, there is a way for both to coexist in universe. One of the biggest criticisms of Lightyear is that it claims to be the film that 6-year-old Andy saw that made him want to get his Buzz Lightyear, but the film in no way resembles a 90s family action film, but that was actually by design. In an interview with the 2V podcast in 2024, director Angus MacLane sort of explains what the intention was when they were developing Lightyear.
I don't think we were as strict to it's the movie that Andy saw throughout. That was the pitch to make the film. Now in the 80s, movies like Rambo, First Blood Part 2, and RoboCop, they were R-rated films that then had cartoons. And true. So the more complicated answer is the toy from Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story is from a Buzz Lightyear cartoon that was a watered down version of a grittier R-rated film.
That's a good point. Because they did have that TV series. Was that kind of like that middle ground of separation that you were kind of saying that this is the animated RoboCop to then the toy?
Yeah. Okay. So that's hard. It's hard to encapsulate that into an opening crawl. One of the criticisms that I gotten early on in the development process is they were like, this is a little bit too much like a Cameron film. And I'm like, yeah. Exactly.
And when you look at it that way, it makes so much more sense. Lightyear wasn't meant to be a 90s family action film. It was meant to be a gritty 80s action film made for adults. The only problem with that, though, is that Pixar does not make live-action R-rated action films. They make animated family films. So when you watch Lightyear, you can very clearly see the way that they unnaturally injected humor and childish antics in order to make it appeal more to kids. But that really wasn't the film they were trying to make. Now, enter Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. Pixar had nearly no involvement with its creation. That was all Disney. And as such, Pixar has basically ignored its existence for the past 2 decades. The only thing that even implies that it's canon is the opening sequence that Pixar made for the pilot film, which, believe it or not, was directed by Angus MacLane. But MacLane had sort of imagined it to be the Saturday morning cartoon spin-off of Lightyear, which would make a lot more sense for 6-year-old Andy to be obsessed with and want the toy from, and also explains why Buzz is a different actor. Now, the production team of Lightyear says that they never watched or referred to Buzz Lightyear of Star Command when they were developing Lightyear, which is fascinating because, as I explained in a recent skit, the pilot film and Lightyear have a ton of the same plot points and story beats, but coincidence or not, that does support MacLane's claim that it was a watered-down version of Lightyear. Now, here's where a lot of the confusion comes in. MacLane says that Andy's Buzz came from the cartoon spin-off of Lightyear, not Lightyear itself. But the opening crawl of Lightyear specifically says that it came from Lightyear, which was Andy's favorite film. Those are 2 different ideas, but the opening crawl of the movie had to be simplified in order for audiences to get it.
One of the challenges is the opening crawl was something that was added last minute because Disney didn't know what the movie was.
Which is why it's not really clear how a cartoon is involved at all. Another issue is that Disney basically buried the show after Lasseter took over during the acquisition of Pixar. Lasseter and a lot of people at Pixar hated the cartoon and resented the fact that Disney made a spin-off show without them solely to cash in on the character rights that they own. That's why Buzz Lightyear of Star Command is not on Disney+. The whole show never got a full physical release. So even if you considered the cartoon canon, you have to go through unconventional means to even watch it. Meaning, unless you were a kid in the 2000s, you might not even know that the show even exists. You can't just say, oh yeah, Buzz came from this cartoon that you've never heard of and we've never acknowledged. Basically, there were a lot of factors working against Angus MacLane's vision, and that's probably a large part of why audiences did not connect with Lightyear. And to make things worse, after Lightyear bombed at the box office, Disney fired MacLane, who had been at Pixar for 25 years during a round of layoffs, and they fired Lightyear's producer, Galen Sussman, who, by the way, is the woman whose maternity leave saved Toy Story 2. You'd think that would give her immunity, but apparently not. I've very openly never been a fan of Lightyear, but I have a lot more appreciation for it now that I know what they were trying to do with it. I highly recommend listening to the full interview on the 2V podcast. It shines a lot of light on what MacLane had envisioned. Also, you need to follow Angus MacLane on Instagram. He makes really entertaining but fascinating videos about Lego. They're genuinely really fun to watch. I definitely recommend checking him out.